Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Scarfey Spurs Talk Podcast. I am covering for Harry again tonight. He's decided he wanted a night off, so me and Jack are taking the reins on this one. And we are a little bit short on the house numbers, but we will be the best possible outcome for you. So my name is Callum Stubbs, and I will be your host for at least the next hour to an hour and a half. And I'm joined, as always, by a good friend of the podcast and a good mate of mine, Jack from the Irish Hotspur. How are you, mate? And thanks for joining me.
Good to be back. I've seen you now twice this week, so hopefully we can build off of the reputation from the last show. Good to be here, Callum. Good to be chatting Spurs, and honestly, good to see football return, because I hate that you get those 3 weeks of getting back into the Premier League mood and swing, and then international break just happens like that. I think it's an absolute crime.
No, exactly, mate. But it has been a busy week. Well, the last busy 2 weeks for Spurs, hasn't it? So we've obviously had a couple of podcasts covering Daniel Levy leaving. We've also had Vinay's interview. I know we discussed it a little bit on Monday, but there's been news since then. Obviously, there's been a new marketing officer coming in from Arsenal. I mean, we do seem to be doing a lot of business, at least on the senior management side, with our North London gypsy rivals, as I like to refer to them as. They are nomadic. They do seem to stick around. But just on the back of that, there's now doubts being spouted by Alex Crook and from TalkSport about Paratici's return to the club. There was all this reports a couple of weeks back from Ben Jacobs saying that he would be returning in a official capacity, either as director of football or as a management director. So what's your take on it, Jack, to see where it comes from at the moment?
I'm a massive fan of Paratici's. I think he inherited the role of director of football when Spurs were in a real mess, if you ask me. I think the Steve Hitchen era really set us back a long period. Like, I think he spent something like 350 to 400 million. And like, I think one of his best signings was like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, in that, span. Like, it really wasn't like a ton of really great signings, really. And some of the bigger ones, of course, the Ndombele, the Lo Celsos, Sessignones, and whatnot of the world were some of the worst signings I'd ever seen at the Tottenham Hotspur. And I felt like Paratici, when he had come in, he basically had to sign a whole new squad of players, had to as well fix the academy, because the academy wasn't producing anybody of any real quality, and he ended up finding a way to do that. He brought in that new wave of scouting. I know people might still prefer the old way. I'm kind of the same way as well, of, it's kind of using more of that seeing eye test, but apparently Spurs' sort of scouting strategy was kind of in the dark ages when it came to finding and recruiting players. So he revolutionized that. And the other thing I would add briefly is he was one of the only guys and directors of football that seemed to actually get on with Levy, but not in a way that they were buddies, but the way that apparently Daniel Levy respected the fact that he would challenge him. Paratici would challenge Levy. And I think those were all good things at the time. I just remember the Paratici era, so much had to be done. And I felt like he got a lot done in a very short space of time. And he even left behind, I think, that brilliant scout Gabbanini, who brought in the likes of Van de Ven and so many other great players, as well. But he brought in some great people underneath him in that scouting department. So I personally would love to have him back. Maybe the fact that he's so closely associated with Daniel Levy that the Lewis family might feel like they just want to get a clean break from anything that is Daniel Levy associated. But personally, I think that would be a mistake. I think Paratici was an excellent director of football when he was with us. And Johan Lange, I'm not as convinced about. I think Johan Lange has been a guy that seems to operate very late into the window and doesn't seem to get signings over the line quickly enough, in my opinion, and also seem to be more intent on signing young but very unproven players for a lot of money as well. So it kind of puts that pressure on them, Matisse Tell, Archie Grays of the world. So I don't know. I would love to have Paratici back, and I'm a little saddened to see that he might not come back.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had a lot of more success than Steve Hitchen, didn't he? I mean, Steve Hitchen's life at Spurs was pretty much summed up by that Amazon documentary saying, I hate the transfer window. Okay, so you're a transfer director or a director of football and you hate transfer season. I mean, even Kamoli and Baldini didn't sort of hate it. So it didn't leave a good impression, did it? And then after that, we then had the Don come in, as we refer to him as. He's had a good time and a bad time. We have to say that he has had a lot more successes than failures, haven't we? He did waste a combined fee of probably about nearly 50 million on Brian Hill and Emerson Royale. We have still been trying to recover from that. We did have Galini in the first window as well as a keeper who didn't seem to adjust to anything apart from maybe Spurs' sub bench. I think he probably had his own arse groove on it, so it was definitely more comfortable for him on that. But no, Don sort of came in with his sort of two-man approach, didn't he? Gabbiadini as his chief scout, and him. He definitely revolutionised a lot of systems, and he definitely had the ear of Levy for definite, at least, didn't he? But I do think that we've got that balancing act now, haven't we? Johan Langer's very good on talent ID. I don't think he does a lot of discussion stages. It was sort of Paratici and Levy who were leading on transfer dealings, at least on that, and negotiations. You see Langer as more the technical side of stuff. He's more linked to the coaching side compared to the seniors or the sort of transfer dealings. But I do think there's an approach to everything, but I'm like you. I like the old style, sort of David Pleat, Ian Bloomfield going out there and finding a Dele Alli, finding a young Carl Walker and a Danny Rose. So definitely Paratici has that aspect to him. And he does have his pocketbook, doesn't he, of every club in Europe where he seems to have at least some player on his list, doesn't he?
I wonder if that's how him and Daniel Levy got on. I think for a few reasons, like I mentioned, and the fact that Paratici challenged Daniel Levy. Maybe Daniel Levy got some sort of sick enjoyment of that, but also because I do feel like he had a lot of yes men around him, maybe intentionally, but the fact that Paratici might have been less of one intrigued him. I think the other thing, though, is that Paratici, maybe compared to Lange, I'm not sure if Paratici was as much doing the scouting. I think he had other guys employed to be doing a lot of that aspect for him. And then, like you mentioned there, Paratici was the guy that would often be in the negotiation rooms trying to figure out how to get the deal over the line. And we saw those deals that we were striking, these like 3-year, 4-year paid installments, type of things. We were signing guys that, looked like they were going to be really difficult to sign because of whatever trouble it was to try to get them out of the club. But Paratici seemed to be able to negotiate in a way that was able to somehow get them a deal, even if they were really complicated. And to a degree, he's such a good deal maker, negotiation guy, that's what got him in trouble in the first place, with Juventus. And the fact that he had such a black book of, dealings that were seen as illegal in a way, as much as he got in trouble for it, it's also a reflection maybe of how good he was at that type of thing. Whereas, like you say there, Johan Lange, you're probably right, didn't have maybe any power to be able to do the negotiations. He was more about just identifying the talent. But then that's what kind of worried me about when he was brought in, was that if he's the one just doing the identifying of the talent, and then Paratici is banned from doing negotiations, right? Like the fact that he's literally not allowed to be in the negotiation room anymore, who does that leave? It leaves Daniel Levy. So Daniel Levy is then the one back to doing negotiations. And that was the whole point why we brought in someone like Paratici, was so that Daniel Levy didn't have to do the negotiations anymore, because we know how that goes. Like I said, it'd be good to get him back in, because I like a guy who likes to maybe operate in a bit of slimy ways when it comes to negotiations. I think it only helps us, but I don't know. There's of course plenty of time to figure out if maybe someone like Vinay can find someone that can do that for us.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of good directors of football out there, isn't there? I mean, we look at Fenway Group with Michael Edwards. Michael Edwards actually has history with Spurs. He was a data analyst and a scout for us many years ago, and we let him go. I think there's Dougie Friedman as well, who left Crystal Palace. I know he's linked with move back to Europe. We've seen Monchi go to Aston Villa as well. There's a lot of good directors of football out there. But in my last question for you on this one, do you think it will happen with him coming back, or do you think this ship has sailed now?
I am fearful of the worst that it won't, because with the way that the Lewis family seems to be operating, I was just on a show earlier with the Irish Hotspur, and Billy T, who you might know from Twitter and whatnot, great guy, seemed to say that they're even rebranding themselves, the Lewis family, to the Lewis family, even though we all know they are Enoch. They're kind of rebranding themselves to maybe give off this image that they are brand new to the club, even though they have been with us for a long, long time, of course. And with that, I wonder if they're just doing a massive clean slate, cleaning everything out, clearing out the house. And sometimes that means people who were, in my opinion, maybe good at their job, in the case of Parategy, might just go, because it's so many times that you see new manager comes in, new owner comes in any aspect of life, let alone sports. They seem to just sometimes want to just clear out everything to build it all themselves. And sometimes I think there's issues with that, but it's just how it is. Even Chelsea, right? Chelsea, when they first were bought by the Americans, they were firing everybody, including the tea lady, when they first came in. So like, it's just something that people tend to do. I don't know. Maybe it's human nature.
Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe it's a clearing house aspect
no.
to it.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely fair. I mean, I like the Don. I think that if he did come back, I think him and Langer in a position with him focusing on seniors and Langer focusing on the youth and the academy side, I think is a good match and all that. It's just whether Spurs, and like you say, with Lewis rebranding, I mean, we've heard more of Tavistock Group, which is actually the Lewis company itself, right. And it's just Enoch is owned by Tavistock, which is owned, ironically, by the Levy Trust or the Lewis Trust. So it will be interesting. But on a more positive note, at least, the last couple of weeks as well, and today, I know I reported this to a couple of group chats and a couple of podcasts, that Spurs have been in active talks with Bentancur for quite a long time, and also Mickey van der Ven talks will be opening soon after the Romero and Spence new deal. I mean, this can only be a positive step, can't it? Because Frank is looking at it and thinking, these two are stalwarts in my team. I need them. Mickey's no longer a young player. He's nearly 25 now, and Bentancur's coming into his prime. So, I mean, this can only be positive, can't it, Jack?
It certainly is, and it does need to happen. I mean, Mickey van der Ven is on less wages than Ben Davis, and so is Rodrigo Bentancur. At least that's according to some of those wages websites that I was looking at last season with Dave Harris at the Irish. And I am just astounded by the fact that Ben Davis is making more money than some of these guys, really. So it just shows that you do need to give these guys a contract boost and give them more money, because they're the ones who are the main focal points in the teams. They're the ones who are considered some of our best players. And I think respectively, both of them are around on something like 60,000, 70,000 a week, which is just pretty incredible. I imagine there's a lot of bonus incentives and things like that in there, but still, like, they should be on much bigger wages than that. And with Mickey van der Ven, I'd be curious if there's any Spurs fan that wouldn't be delighted by that and wouldn't, support, him being given a new contract. Whereas with Bentancur, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, maybe you might be one of them, but I really like Bentancur, but he's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea for whatever reason. There's some people that don't seem to be as mesmerized by that wonderful type of touch that he has. I think he's graceful on the ball. I think when he plays his best games, I think he's a very, very lovely midfielder. And I think he's also a bit like Pop Matasar, where the amount of ground that he can cover as well and winning the ball back. I love watching Bentancur. And I think before he got that injury under Antonio Conte, and then kind of almost got two more injuries as well, poor guy, he looked like one of the best midfielders in Europe at the time, next to Højbjerg in that two-man midfield. He was an absolute monster. And I think we're starting to see, after a while now, that version of Bentancur again under Thomas Frank. And I just, and even in the Europa League run, I thought Bentancur was secretly one of our best players in that Europa League run, holding down the number 6. And I'm just a massive fan of his, and I think he does deserve a new contract. And weirdly enough, he's actually one of the more experienced players. Spurs don't have a ton of experienced players. He's a guy that's, of course, played Uruguayan national team, one of their best players, has played for Juventus in multiple Champions League campaigns, Serie A campaigns, won trophies before. And then also, like, he's been kind of on the map at a pretty high level since like 18 or 19 of age. So I just think he's someone that's pretty invaluable, really. I don't see a need to to sell the guy, and I think he should stick around. Whereas Mickey Van de Ven, I think we all want Mickey Van de Ven to stay.
Yeah, we know Mickey's a class player, and we never have any doubts apart from maybe his injury record. So no, I'm completely behind you on Mickey. And to be honest, I love how silky smooth Rodrigo Bentancur can be on his day. He has that sort of air about him of a South American midfielder who just glides. That's the thing. So no, I'm definitely in the camp of saying if I had a choice of renewing his contract and Basuma's, I would literally go Bentancur 100%. And I thought to get him for 15 million was an absolute steal and all that, to be honest. But
yeah.
I mean, 15 million plus 5 million in add-ons. I mean, we got him. And when you think about it, Juventus did a deal with Aston Villa, 2 seasons ago? They gave them Douglas Luiz and they got Samuel Willing Jr. back and Berentaxia. Both haven't even made an appearance for Aston Villa, and yet we got Kulu and Bentancur for a combined 50 million. And they have been stalwart players in our squad. So, I mean, I know Kulu they probably have a longer contract with because he signed afterwards, but Bentancur for me has to stay. And he's 27 or 28 now. So definitely a player that I would build our squad around in the midfield. Let's put it that way. And like you say, him and Sarr on their days can be some of the best midfielders in the Premier League, in my opinion, mate. So no, I'm definitely all for it. And I believe he's on 80 and I think Mickey's on 50. So based on what the figures have been saying, it's going to be Mickey's going to go up to 100 grand a week and Bentancur will probably go to 120 to 140. So it's not like we're not upping the wages at all. That's quite dramatic increases at 50 to 70 million or 50 to 70 grand a week per player. So I do think the wage cap is gradually going up. And like you say, Spurs' wages are very incentivised as well. Big bonuses, big appearance fees. The basic wage might be a little bit lower than other clubs, but the bonuses is what takes it up to the next level. And Chelsea do this as well, to be honest. They sign up these big contracts and they're all incentivised. So it does work out. So no, I'm fully behind both of them getting a new contract, to be honest. I'm sure Spurs would have wanted to probably do them in the transfer window, if I'm being honest with you. But to do them in the season, it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and it does. Keeps us on our toes as well, don't it?
Yeah, maybe it also just had to do with, maybe less so with Mickey Van de Ven, because I think we all knew that Thomas Frank would find a use for him. But maybe it was just also waiting and seeing if Bentancur liked Thomas Frank, because he is at this point in his career where he wants to be at the right club, where he feels like he can finish his career strongly and be at the place that will respect him and give him minutes. And he feels like he's a valued player in the team and in the squad. And maybe it was just the case that Bentancur might have been delaying the negotiations, just wanting to know whether Thomas Frank would get the use out of him. And he feels like this is the right manager for him. And just one thing to add, like maybe two things just quickly. I think Archie Gray is someone who I have a little bit of doubts about, to be perfectly honest. But having Joao Palhinha and Bentancur there, I think can only be good influences on him. You know, two guys who are very experienced, but also kind of have two different sides of their game, where Palhinha is just an absolute monster defensively. Archie Gray can learn about that, learn to be a brave player off of the ball. Bentancur a bit the same. We know like he can get his foot in, he can get stuck in for sure. But then Bentancur, like you said, just has that grace and that class in possession that maybe also Archie Gray can learn from. Because sometimes I think with Archie, he goes a bit hiding when looking for the ball. Like I think only good midfielders are the ones who look like they're always open and always can receive the ball and do something with it as they receive it. Bentancur is one of those. He always seems to be open, always seems to be available for a pass, and then knows what to do with it when he receives it. Whereas Archie Gray, I've sometimes questioned that, where he seems to be marked kind of easily, but then also when he does receive it, he's very sideways and very backwards. But then just the other thing, just to add what you mentioned about the wages, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but those increases in wages, if those are to be true of that much of a significance and in terms of actual weekly wage, maybe that's already a sign of a slight change from the Levy era to now this Lewis era, because we knew that was a staple of Levy, was to keep the wages low and keep the incentives high to somehow convince them that it was all worth it.
No, it's definitely a fair point. And I mean, I just want to come back to that point you made on Archie. I'm actually a big fan of Archie's. And
Yeah.
I think Archie's problem, and this is one that Eric Dyer had when he was at Spurs, he was very versatile, a very, very versatile player. But I don't know where his true position is because the other night he played in centre back for the England under 21s. For us, he's played in centre back, right back, and
Right.
six. So I do think Archie's future is as a shield in six, whereas Paulinho is more of a progressive six, if you get what I mean. I think Archie will probably sit deeper as a shield and drop into a back three maybe at times. And I feel that he's maybe a little bit less mobile, but I definitely think there's a really good player there in Archie. And the fact is, he's not even 20 yet. So I
Yeah,
think he's
true.
got time on his side. And when you kind of look at the profiles now, we've got Archie as a six, Bergvall more towards an eight, and Sar's kind of developing into an eight into a progressive 10 as well. So I think that's quite exciting when we
Yeah.
look here. And then when you look down the lower age levels as well, you've then got Donnelly, who's a progressive 8 to 10. You've then got Callum Olasesi, who's pushing and vying for a place in the first team. You've got Tyrese Hall as well. So there's definitely a lot of good talent to sort of follow them guys through to sort of push Bentancur, Paulinho forward as
Right.
well. So it does have a lot of exciting times for us. And I just wanted to move on to another person who's had a very big international break as well. Jed Spence has become the first Muslim player to play for England as well. And it has a very big significance in that because obviously he did make his England debut in the game against, I believe who was it against? Was it against Slovakia or someone the other night?
Serbia.
Serbia, that was it, where I expected us to get kicked up in the air and take a load of pelting from ultras. But obviously, he has set history to become the first Muslim player to play for England. So it has a very big connotation for young Muslim generations as well to aspire to. So, I mean, what was your thoughts on Jed making his debut?
Long deserved. I mean, felt like he was snubbed maybe unfairly last season, right? I understand Miles Lewis Skelly, very talented, but I think when he was given the nod ahead of Jet Spence, it felt a bit harsh at the time because I felt like Miles Lewis Skelly had only just really come in, had only just maybe shown like a flash or two in like a game or two for Arteta, but then like Jet Spence had been kind of doing it slightly more regularly that season, and helping Spurs out. So it just felt a bit harsh. And then I forget what happened there. I think like either Jet Spence got injured or like Udogi just sort of came straight back into the team ahead of him. Then he seemed to kind of lose his place there under Ange Postecoglou once again. So it just felt like this has been a long time coming. And I think Jed absolutely deserves it. And he's clearly had whatever you call it, a rough go at Spurs, where just completely used as a pawn by Daniel Levy and Antonio Conte. You have to feel for a guy being that young, being brought into the Premier League as well, and then just having to be treated that way, just completely unfairly by both Levy and I feel like Antonio Conte. And then after that, kind of just felt like he was, for some reason or another, brushed off by Ange Postecoglou to a degree as well, where he just wasn't really given maybe a fair shot or just wasn't maybe showing enough on the training ground. So then he was shipped off on loan and he's just had, like a long journey to get to this point. So it's, if anything, it's one of those very encouraging stories for kids because maybe a lot of the time they see the young Lamine Yamals and whatnot of the world that just sort of hit the first team straight away. But sometimes for other players, it takes a little bit longer. They have to go through very tough learning periods and have to experience some pretty just difficult situations and times and seasons. And Jed Spence has come out of it only stronger. So fair play to the guy.
No, it's definitely fair. And I mean, I don't know if you're a big fan of comic books, but I definitely am. And you sort of see character arcs, don't you, where they go from being the villain to the hero as such. And I don't think Jed was ever a villain, but Conte made him out to be. It was he's the club's player. He is definitely a villain in there, and I don't see him as my player. But this is sort of like one of the best recovery arcs that I've seen in football in a long
That's a good way to
time.
put it. Yeah.
And when you think he's gone on loan to Leeds, didn't work out under Daniel Farker or whoever was in charge there. He went to Stade Rennais. He was best mates with Desiree Doué for a year as well. I mean, look at that man. He's gone on to become a massive player in the world. And Jed was one of them who was pushing the man to Spurs. It was his best mate for God knows how long. And sort of Jed has had to bide his time. But for that player, Neil Warnock, all them years ago, said he's either going to be one of the best players or he's going to be the worst player. There was no in between. And we've sort of seen full circle here. He's gone from being this young kid with potentially an attitude problem to a very consummate professional who has taken on some of the best wingers in the Premier League and maybe even the world in the last 6 to 9 months. And he's done it very well. And to see him play as a left back, out of position, he can play left wing, right wing, he can play right back, he can play left back. I mean, I'm sure we saw him at centre back at some point last year because everyone played at centre back for Spurs last year, apart from Dom Solanke. But when we look at this, we have to think what a great professional he's shown to be. And it was kind of shown by Kane's message. I don't know whether you've seen the clip of, and you can see the heartfelt emotion in Kane as well, because obviously the first season that Jed came in was Kane's last season, and you could see that he wasn't trying to give too much away, but you could see he's seen all the stuff that Jed went through in their first 6 months with Antonio Conte, can't you? So it definitely has an air of emotion to it to sort of make Kane seem even more human, because somehow people have managed to turn Kane into the anti-Spurs at the moment. I mean, the anti-Spurs for me is Matt Law. Let's put it that way, because that man is more turgid than a fucking sewer. But in reality, Kane is still a Spurs legend. You can't get away from it. And he's still a legendary England captain. He's the top goal scorer. It's everything that we want in a leader. And he's shown that by introducing Jed, hasn't he? And giving him that beanie or hat or whatever it was that they gave him, that cap for it. I mean, Eze in the picture didn't look too happy, did he, in the background? I don't know if you saw his face as well. He's thinking, I could have been playing with this geezer, but no, instead I'm playing with Lewis Skelly.
I think you absolutely made the point I was going to make on Harry Kane's emotion towards it. And I do think that is an example that maybe people wouldn't want to admit, that Harry Kane, I think, still absolutely has a lot of love and a soft spot forever for Spurs. I don't think he would, like, he was kind of choking up a little bit, like, as he was saying it. Like, I don't think he would have done that if, for example, if a Lewis Skelly, is being given his, opportunity, if someone else from another club is being given their opportunity with England. Like, I think Harry Kane would probably sound like his normal, pretty, mellow, boring self, really, like when giving these speeches. But this one seemed to have a lot of heart behind it, a lot of emotion behind it. And I think that's absolutely right. That was the exact point I was going to make, that Harry Kane still clearly has a lot of love and has that appreciation for people that are giving it a go at Tottenham Hotspur and are playing and wearing this badge. So I was going to make the exact same point. Well said.
No, really appreciate that, mate. And it definitely inspires us when we think that as well, Tottenham have produced the most England stars to make their England debut now. We've overtaken Aston Villa as well to make it, I believe, 80 players now that we've had make our England debut. So it's definitely positive. Hopefully, I mean,
just shows we're massive.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're massive in our own heads, let's put it that way, but we can be delusional in our own way, mate, for definite. But no, I definitely think that Spence is pushing, and when you look at the England setup, we've got probably Ben Chilwell nowhere near the England lineup now. Same with Luke Shaw as well. Brandon Williams nowhere near either. So I think that if Spence is going to be competing for a World Cup berth, he's probably going to be competing with Skelly, Reece James, Livramento of Newcastle, they're the only sort of ones that I can see for definite. I can't see Carl Walker coming back, but as we know, Thomas Tuchel loves an oldie in that squad who has been there, seen it, done it, and is a has-been from previous squads. But do you think he would be competing for right back or left back in this squad?
I don't really know the England squad as maybe as well as others do, but I'd imagine he's just playing for potentially the left back position, because I feel like maybe you might be a tad lighter over there. Like you have maybe Livramento who can play there, but also is a bit like Jed Spence where he can play kind of both right back and left back. But I can't really think of too many left backs still for England. That's what's kind of been funny about your guys' team, is that I feel like for the past, I don't know how many tournaments, but it feels like you guys have like 20 odd right backs to pick from and then very few like actual left backs to pick from. And I think Jed Spence, I'd imagine if he wants to get minutes, it would be more in the left back role. And just the thing I would add is, even though I think he is good going forward and he has a trick or two up his sleeve in terms of getting out of tight situations and difficult situations, he is coming through as more of a defensive specialist than maybe, I don't know, like other fullbacks nowadays. A lot of fullbacks nowadays get given a lot of praise for how good they are going forward, but not as much defensively. And I think Jed Spence seems to be a bit more the opposite. He's just a guy who can really lock up a player and make it really difficult for them to create and be able to get a lot of breathing room. And Jed Spence can maybe be used as a specialist type defender on the left side. And then if you have your Trent Alexander-Arnold type player on the right that is more, used to go forward, that could be a good weapon for England. But I don't want to give you guys any ideas.
Well, I mean, are Canada going to be at the World Cup, or are we going to be seeing?
I'm a Yank, but I'm American, but I'm not really a big fan of the U.S. men's national team. I don't necessarily have a team that I really root for. I kind of just almost root for maybe more the underdogs every tournament. And then I'm a big fan of a lot of the Serbian, teams like Croatia, Serbia, because I was a big Luka Modric fan. And so I usually like rooting for the Itches. And then I was a German major, so I also tend to have a soft spot for Germany. So if anything, all the teams that England normally despise, usually I have a bit of a soft spot for.
Well, yeah, we usually have either a run-in with them because of their ultras, who are literally ex-Russian KGB or Spetsnaz in there from the Cold War era, or we have the run-in because the Americans still see us as a rival from, 1755 or something like that. You still remember the War of Independence on this one for us. And to be fair, you guys still tried to take Canada, didn't you, as well? And even the Canadians beat you back in the one war that you've had with them in the past. So maybe they can do it on the footballs. How have we ended up on a history lesson? We've ended up on national history, but no.
Hard to remember how many wars the U.S. have been in, so you have to add it to the list, really, for me. I have to jog my memory.
Well, no, exactly, mate. Exactly. It's definitely a lot. But I won't make this a politics show or a historical one because we are talking football. But do you think that Jed will probably go on the World Cup squad? Or do you think he's got to do some more to get there yet?
If he keeps having the season he's having, surely he has to get into that squad. Like I say, I think it's a crime that he wasn't in it last season. So I think if he just continues down the same path, he should be. And you'd hope that maybe this time around, I understand that Destiny Udogie was sort of Ange's guy and was maybe someone that was originally in maybe Ange's plans, but it had felt a bit harsh how quickly Udogie was just thrown in ahead of him last season, when he came back into the team. And you'd hope that Thomas Frank plays a bit more of the merit-based game where, he is, let's say, given still the minutes, and then Udogie sort of works his way back into the team. And if Udogie's better than him, he's better than him. That's how the cookie crumbles. But I just felt like maybe that was the reason Jed Spence wasn't picked maybe last season, was because Ange Postecoglou was so quick to throw Udogie back in.
Potentially. I mean, you did make a very valid point there, though, and it kind of links in with the defensive side of what you said about with Spence. it seems to be that in Frank's style, he likes to have one attacking fullback and one sort of inverted defensive fullback to sort of drop into that free line if he's not playing a certain type of six. So I definitely think there's a merit to it where we probably will see Spence with Udogie at times, and we'll see Spence with Porro at times, because Porro likes going forward, Udogie likes going forward. Spence can go forward, but has been conditioned to use his speed like Mickey has to recover and be one of the best one-on-one fullbacks in terms of defensive side of the game for the last probably season, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, I'd completely agree with that. I'd say Jet Spence is maybe the best defending fullback that we have right now, to be perfectly honest. I think Udogie has really good defensive games in him, but then has also had some just random mistakes here and there that have just been really costly. So I think that's kind of his issue, is he can be really solid for 95% of the game and then just has this weird slip up or whatever. But maybe that was under the Ange era, so it kind of comes with like a grain of salt, where they do get put under a lot of pressure. And then Pedro Porro, I do sometimes think is criticized a bit harshly defensively, because I think he's had plenty of good games defensively, plenty of good ones, but he's also had some sketchy ones as well where he's just, had the run in on him. So he's a bit more of a mixed bag. But I think Jed, hard to recall, and maybe that's why he tweets and, posts this stuff on his social media. Hard to recall any player that's given him a lot of trouble, really, defensively. So I think that's where he has his edge over those two guys, is he is decent going forward, but is more of a defensive specialist than the rest.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, and when he has had a bad game, Spence, it's been when the whole team has had a bad game, like the Liverpool game where we lost, 5-1 last year. He obviously didn't have a great game against Bournemouth, up against Semenyo and Evan Nilsson, but
oh yeah, that's right.
All the Spurs had a shit game, to be honest, in all honesty, didn't we? So he can't just be singled out for that. I think the only ones that came out with any credit from that game were maybe Matthias Tell, Van der Ven, Bergvall and Vicario, and two of them came on as subs. So, I mean, not hardly any of the first team starting 11 did themselves much credit, did they?
Well, that was during that funny period, though, where I'm not giving Spence too much of an excuse for this, because I think maybe there has been questions about maybe this is why certain managers didn't love him as much. You just wonder if he's a passionate guy and, needs that arm around his shoulder type of player, because it felt like when Ange was so quick to sort of throw him to the subs bench again, he seemed to down tools a little bit from the looks of things, when that happened, because he was relegated to the squad that wasn't playing in the Europa League. He was just quickly lost his spot, and felt like after that, Jet Spence sort of dropped off a level or two, and just his attitude seemed to be not nearly as intense and as, focused as it was before, when he was kind of a regular in the team. And I wonder if that's maybe what happened there. And kind of was the case with a few of the players, where they kind of just seemed to know that, yeah, we're the Premier League team that's 17th, and losing game after game. And then there's the other team that will play in the Europa League that has a good chance of winning a trophy. And again, not trying to excuse it, just trying to explain, maybe what that was. Felt like the Premier League team that was being picked under Ange Postecoglou almost just had this air of, I don't know, anxiety or whatever word you want to use, where they just seemed to know that they were probably going to lose.
Yeah, no, of course, that's definitely a very valid point. So just the last point on that, did this international break come at a good or bad time for Spurs, do you think?
I don't know. I think it's a very inconvenient international break if you are a team that's performing pretty well. I think we were, for the most part. Of course, that Bournemouth game wasn't great, but Thomas Frank, what did say, it's not like it's going to be perfect, starting off. So we got to see two really good performances. Funny enough, the Man City one was actually better than the Burnley one, in my opinion, despite the scoreline difference. And the Bournemouth game was then a bad version of Spurs. So we kind of got a lot to work with in terms of all the above. And then it would have been nice just to have played someone like a West Ham London derby the week after that. Instead, we had to wait. All this Daniel Levy news has happened. Players go off on international break. it just feels like you're cutting off a bit of momentum. It seems to benefit this really early international break that always happens in the beginning stages of the season. It seems to only really benefit teams that want to sack their manager like inside the first 3 weeks. So Nuno, I don't know, surprised actually Graham Potter is still in the job. I think the fact that he won his last week before this international break is maybe the only reason he is still in one. So it only seems to benefit teams, this international break, teams that are doing really, really poorly, where they just get like a week or two off to, yeah. Whereas we didn't really need that week or two. It felt like we didn't need it.
That's quite a funny point though that you make there, mate, because obviously that was the job that, or the game that probably saved Graham Potter's time. Was that one of the games that sealed Nuno's fate alongside the fat Greek in Marinakis, do you reckon? Or do you think it was just his last game conveniently that they just sacked him after it?
I think it was already written on the wall that Nuno, I think, was going to get sacked unfairly, in my opinion. And so I think that was part of the reason why maybe Forrest started losing games, was because maybe the squad, as well as Nuno, seemed to realize that the writing was on the wall for him. And it just seems like this early international break is almost like a do-over for teams that maybe aren't doing too well or too hot, where like they come out with this initial plan with the manager, the club can rethink, maybe is this guy the right person or not? Maybe if they do still believe in the manager, but it hasn't gone well in the first few weeks, they can regroup, rethink about maybe the tactics, personnel choices, that type of thing, right? They get that extra time to just sort of go over again, how they want to sort of go about the campaign. And so, like I said, it seems to only benefit teams that are not doing so well in the first initial weeks. Teams that, in our case, who are close to being at the top of the league, I think it only actually hurts us. I think it actually cuts off momentum. I'm not going to use it as an excuse for how West Ham game goes, but yeah, I don't think we needed it.
I mean, ironically, we always seem to lose the game or draw the game before the international break. So it's like everyone's down tools, ready, going, right, I'm on the plane Sunday night, Monday morning. I'm joining up. If I'm Christian Romero, I'm going to Argentina in the sun. If I'm Richarlison, I'm going to Brazil. If I'm Luka Vuskovic, I'm going to Croatia. If I'm Mickey, I'm going to the rainy Netherlands as well. So it's kind of like they have their mind elsewhere. But at least with this one, it was kind of like World Cup qualifiers a little bit, but still doesn't really inspire me, because like we have Nations League and pointless crap and friendlies, to be honest. It's all a waste of time. It's a way for these international teams to get their money in from their sponsorships to get them going for the year. But I'm not a big fan of it unless it's a competition, to be honest. Because summer Euros and World Cup, I watch it. I don't know whether it's the same for you out in Seattle, mate, but I mean...
Yeah, I 100% watch it. It's just, I'm a bit like you, where international break, since I don't really have a team I'm super passionate about, really, it is just more like a week or two off from football. But when you're just getting back into it, I see it as, again, like a bit of an inconvenience, where I'm just kind of like, well, it just started again. Like, it'd be nice if we could go on for a few more weeks, but then it gets so quickly taken away from you. It's like having I don't know, I can't remember the last time I've had a real like full course dinner, but it's like, being given 1 or 2 plates, and then you have to wait 2 hours before like the entree comes out or something like that. That's what it feels like.
Oh, mate, don't worry. I've had one of them in central London. I waited 2.5 hours for a steak. Completely not worth it. I think our table bill probably came to about 900 quid between about 6 or 7 of us. And for the 2.5 hour wait, 50% discount for having a row with a maitre d'. So it went down well, mate. I managed to get us 50% off. So I can't. Yeah, the steak tasted like crap and it had gristle on it. And yet they wanted 90 quid for the steak. So, I mean, I'm not paying that. No, thank you. No. Oh, but right, let's get on to West Ham, because obviously we come into it on the back of a loss. They come on, 2 wins and 1 loss, and theoretically a Super Cup loss, if we really want to go back that far. They come into it with a very depleted squad, but on the back of a win against a Forest squad who, on paper, we would say that Spurs could probably do with a couple of their players realistically. But, I mean, with West Ham, we always seem to see them treat it as a bigger game than us, realistically. It seems to be their 2 cup finals a year because they can't get anywhere else. What's your thoughts around that?
I think it is their cup final. I know it's a joke, but it simply is. Like the way that they seem to treat it versus us, we seem to treat it like a little brother type of, I don't know, like you're playing your little brother in like a FIFA game or something like that, where he's like really taking it seriously so that he can get one up on you. And then you're just kind of like, oh, well, I got to put a little bit of effort into this. Don't want to embarrass myself either. But it does seem to be taken far more seriously by them than with us. And I think the reason being is because we just have so many teams that hate us. They kind of just have to get in line, really. So we sort of have the luxury or the maybe the unluckiness to pick so many teams that treat us like their cup final. Chelsea, a bit of the same. And with West Ham this season, I'll be honest, like I'm not even trying to hype us up or anything. I do think this should be a winnable game because they have looked to me like one of the worst teams in the Premier League, to be honest. Like the way they started off was a bit of a confirmation towards anybody that, like myself and others, who probably felt like they actually have a chance of potentially going down this season, or like they aren't, even though they have the name West Ham United. You look at how other squads have prepared, the way that Graham Potter finished the season under them, it wasn't pretty. I think he had a lot of time to sort of settle in, under no pressure, really. It felt like either, like at West Ham, he just sort of had like a season to just sort of settle the team, get his ideas across, then go about it the next season, see if they can actually push for maybe a higher finish up in the league table. And he just hasn't. It's a bit like Ruben Amorim, where you're just kind of like, you haven't really seen anything to really be encouraged by, to be honest. And even that win against Forest, I was only really able to watch the highlights, but a lot of the goals, if I recall, came towards the very end of the game when maybe it was just sort of a 0-0 situation. And then they just kind of lucked out with a lot of really great goals. But I'll be honest, they look like one of the worst teams in the Premier League, and I hope that we can exploit that against them. But it's a bit like Chelsea, where I am sometimes have to be aware of the fact that so many times you even see Chelsea are in a bad run of form or something like that, and all of a sudden Spurs come to town and then they play their absolute best game that they have in months.
Tottenham will see you now. It's like Dr. Tottenham will see you now, isn't it? We're like the recovery merchants for them.
We've given them some good games recently, though, at the London Stadium. It's just that we haven't come away with the desired result, it felt like. Actually, if anything, some of the recent games against them have been a bit boring and a bit drab, I would say. Like, I remember that one under Ange felt like one of the most boring, lack of quality games I'd seen in a long time. Like, that's how bad West Ham were even last season, that they nearly lost to us in their own stadium with the only game that was important to them. Like, they had nothing to play for in those final games. Like, they were absolutely on the beach, really. And they still struggled against us. I actually felt like we were the better team for about 45 minutes, I remember, against them. But it's not like we were doing anything that incredible. We were just slightly better. And I just hope that maybe now under Frank, we are definitely a better team. And if West Ham are as bad as they were last year against us, which I think they kind of are, hopefully we can take advantage of that. And I'm not saying smash them, but, can win relatively convincingly. Yeah, that's the thing. We played well enough to get a result. We just haven't. I felt like in recent games against them away from home.
I think we can say that in a lot of games, isn't it? That we play well, but it's our own mistakes that sort of undo us. And that was one of the reasons why we did draw that game last year. I mean, we weren't much better than them, but we were a little bit better. And their goal came from a mistake of us switching off at the back. And it usually seems to be that. And we saw that in the Bournemouth game. But realistically, this game has a lot of sort of personal touches for me. I mean, we are going to the Athletics Stadium. They are an athletics club. They're not a football club. I would like to put that out there. My father-in-law is West Ham as well. And realistically, if I'm over my partner's house, I will be watching it with my father-in-law. So literally, it will be date night, but football version. And we have to win it. It's either going to be that I'm getting launched out a window or he's getting launched out a window. That's how we get when we're on the rivalries. But it's got a lot of good matchups in this game, hasn't it? Because there are some players in that West Ham squad that I know that Spurs would love to have. There are a few. I mean, their biggest threat is obviously Jared Bowen. Their biggest creator is Lucas Paqueta. There are not many other players in there who really set the world alight, but we know that they do have other options who could do something. And we know that Callum Wilson seems to love a goal against us as
true.
well. The question is he injured yet or is he not? Because I don't honestly know. That's the thing. I think he's taken over Jack Wilshere's injury bench over at West Ham for it. But how do we deal with Jared Bowen? Because realistically, is he going to play on the wing? Is he going to play up front for them? How do we nullify that threat that he poses? Because he is their top goal scorer since Antonio's left. And, I mean, he's a thorn in any club, any team side that he plays against. He has that aspect about him, that moment of magic. And the fact that he never gets an England call-up is daylight robbery for me. I mean, when you look at it, Madwecki gets a call up over him and all that. I mean, I wanted Jared Bowen when we looked at him or Jack Clarke. How did West Ham get Jared Bowen and we got Jack Clarke? And we know how that went.
Steve Hitchen era. That's comes back to that. Jared Bowen is a quality player. I think it also shows your quality. There are a lot of guys who can look good in a good team, but sometimes real quality players can look good in a terrible team. And he's looked good in a terrible team before. I think he's a bit like, he's not like Harry Kane's quality or anything like that, but there were plenty of years where it was just Son and Kane just carrying a terrible Tottenham team. And I think Jared Bowen has a bit of that about him where he can just, it's a very Yank phrase. It's a very American phrase, but he can put the team on his back and just sort of pull something out of nothing, create a bit of quality out of nothing. And you give him a bit of a dangerous moment, not even space, like give him just like a bit of momentum running towards a defender. He seems to be able to find angles to be able to fire a really good shot that just gets past keepers, and he knows how to take on his man. He just has a lot of quality about him in the final third. And another thing to say too is like during that David Moyes era, it was a team that felt like they would only get so many chances a game, because they played such ugly defensive football. And so Jared Bowen was still really clinical. It felt like when he did get that one or two chances, he would take them usually. And that's the one thing I worry about him is I think he's very efficient and he's very clinical. Whereas other players, sometimes do need a lot of chances. They need a lot of service in order to score. I would say he's the opposite. You give that guy only one or two and he'll usually bury it.
No, most definitely. And I mean, we say that David Moyes' era was ugly, but I mean, we've seen Lopetegui and we've seen Graham Potter. I mean, how? Because now Moyes is doing great at Everton, isn't he? He's got a misfiring Jack Grealish on form. He's got Iliman Ndiaye. He's got who else has he got?
He's able to get Beto to score, and that guy I thought was absolutely useless under Sean Dyche. He was one of the worst forwards I'd ever seen.
Exactly. And, so I mean, David Moyes is like the recovery merchant. Lopetegui is the one that's killed everything. Not Graham Roberts. He's a Spurs legend. Graham Potter, sort of. I don't know what has happened to him. He is like just dropped and dropped and dropped. And he used to play really entertaining football at Brighton. Yet he can't achieve this with a West Ham team that somehow have to deploy Guido Rodriguez and James Ward-Prowse as sixes. I mean, I've never seen James Ward-Prowse in his life play as six until he went to this season of West Ham. Yeah. And he was one of the best playmakers in the Premier League at Southampton, wasn't he? So, I mean, there's definitely different aspects for us to do it. But if I just spin it back to Jared Bowen quickly, if he's up front, who do we deploy in our back four to nullify him? Because he will be a handful. And I'll be
surprised if he does play up front because, like you mentioned, Callum Wilson's there, Fulkrug is there, and I think Jared Bowen is better used as a right winger than he is as a striker. I think sometimes he's had to play striker just out of convenience for the West Ham team when they had Fulkrug, who was injured for a large period, and then Antonio, we know, has also been out for a long time. So I think it was more just out of necessity that he had to play up front. So I'd be surprised if he did. But I think it's going to be Jed Spence, to be honest, up against him. Another person he can put in his penitentiary.
No, most definitely. I mean, when you do have big German sod like Fulcrook coming at you. I mean, how they managed to spend 35 million on someone who, well, Newcastle pretty much just brought in the younger version of him now in Voltamida, to be fair. Put them together and you've got the striking equivalent of Shkodran Mustafi and Bud Stubber. Literally, they are slow, immobile, and if you put something on their head, it's going in. But that's about it. Whereas when you do think of Bowen, even when he's deployed on the right to up front, he does have that aspect of magic and flair, doesn't he? And maybe Jed can put him on his arse and Mickey can sort of be there. But my hesitation would be who we play sort of in front of. Because just say if the Udogi's not fully fit yet and we play Spence, Van der Ven, Romero, Porro, who do we play as that 6 or that holding midfielder in front of them?
I think you got to still continue with Palhinha and Bentancur together. I think against a West Ham team away from home, I lean a bit more defensive, as much as, of course, I made fun of David Moyes and the sort of ugly football of theirs. I don't mind sometimes playing a bit of an uglier manner as long as you are a bit more solid defensively. I just sort of hate conceding goals. And I think away from home at West Ham, I think that's going to be the main goal to begin with. First half, just don't concede. And I think the way you do that is you have Palhinha there to protect the back line and also to be just an extra presence to get in the way of a Fulkrug or a Callum Wilson, block any of those sort of passing lanes into them, and then also just be a guy that can maybe help out in defending a set piece or two, because that's also kind of been a West Ham thing. Maybe not as much under Graham Potter, but I remember under David Moyes, that was just a constant thing with them. They just were so dangerous under set pieces. It felt like it was one of the only ways they would score. So I think you got to go Palhinha and you got to go Bentancur. But my only just thing with Palhinha is I think we have a lot of time to look at this. I might be going a little bit early, but he is a very good signing. But sometimes he can be a little bit, not as progressive in possession. Like he sometimes is a bit of a sideways guy, likes to maybe go backwards, and there have been times I thought against Bournemouth where he was getting onto the ball and there were passes forward that he could have made, but he just doesn't see them or isn't as comfortable playing them. Whereas I think Bentancur is, but when Bentancur isn't playing as in the 6, it's a lot harder for him to be able to be that guy. But I think you still go with Palhinha, regardless of what I just said.
No, that's fair. I do wonder whether the profile of Palhinha is that he's a 6 destroyer, not a 6 ball player, if you get what I mean. And that's where I think that when we had the links to Adam Walton through the summer, he was more that ball playing, progressive 6, deep line playmaker, whereas Palhinha was the opposite profile to that. And I mean, I like the profile of Palhinha. I do think it's good. I do think he's a little bit slow. I do think that he's a big unit of a guy, so he definitely has that in him. But that maybe playing him alongside a Bergvall and a Bentancur maybe gives him more outlet to just do his sweeping, covering up, and the other two play the passing. But this game does come sort of on the back of us making 2 late signings in the window as well that are going to have an impact on that midfield and potentially either up front or on the wings as well now, doesn't it? So, I mean, we've got, just say, Palhinha and Bentancur. They'll compete with Paqueta in the middle and most likely Guido Rodriguez and maybe Ward-Prowse, which will be a good battle in there. So I think that'll be the matchups. But do you think we will see any of our new signings up front in our sort of front 3/front 4 at the moment? What do you think, mate?
I'd be nice to see Xavi Simons come into the team. I think the issue is that the midfield has been probably the best of all the positions, or of all the areas. It's probably been the best under Thomas Frank. The defense has been solid. They've been good. But really, it's been like the story of the midfield. Like Pop Matasar is essentially undroppable. You could say that Bentancur and Palhinha, for the most part, have also been a bit undroppable under Thomas Frank. But, maybe with those 3, they all can cover a lot of ground. They can be really solid defensively. They can lead the press. But against a team like West Ham, is that what you really need? You might need someone that can unlock, some things a bit more, just have a bit more quality in possession to either play it around the corner or be able to thread a ball in behind, just be a bit more dangerous when they do have the ball at their feet. And Xavi Simons is brought in to be that guy. And I think we needed a number 10 at some point. Yeah, go ahead.
So if I said to you now that you've got a choice of Paulinho, Bentancur and Sarr in there, if we're going to play Simons as a 10 and not on the left wing, who are you dropping out of them three? You got to drop one to play Simons ahead.
I think I would play Simons through the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably go CDM. I'd probably go Bentancur through the middle, and I'd go Sarr and then Simons on the left. Sorry about the dog.
That's all right. So, yeah, for me, I mean, I'd probably go Paulinho for midfield sweeper destroyer, probably go Sarr as your high-energy midfielder, and I'd play Simons ahead. I'd actually sacrifice Bentancur in this game. I think that we need someone with a little bit more energy to sort of bounce off of Paulinho and then have Simons posting up front, sort of in that 10, coming deep and then progressing forward sort of thing. I think that would be quite interesting to see if we are going to deploy him in that one for definite. Obviously, we will be seeing different players coming into this game as well. With Colomani being signed on deadline day, he will have had at least 2 weeks with Thomas Frank now doing his training. So it'll be interesting to see how he deploys with that. And also we've got Dom Solanke, who we haven't heard anything on yet. And I believe we've got Thomas Frank's press conference tomorrow, which will sort of dictate the injury news as such, because I still believe Kota Sakai will be out with his long-term leg injury. How we can sign two people. Ryan Sessegnon comes up in with a leg injury, doesn't start his first game till October or November of that year. Kota Sakai, leg injury, will start his first game in probably November or December. How does that work?
I mean, it feels like at this point we've gotten rid of the medical team. We got rid of Ange. What's there left? Like, they might just have to make sure that the training ground just doesn't have concrete, too close to the top of the Astro or something like that. Or maybe someone who worked on the training ground, might have been an Arsenal fan and buried like a shirt or, someone's shin bone, underneath there. And that's what's causing.
Are we going to have like a burial mound underneath like pitch one or something like that? Do we just wrap everyone in bubble wrap all week and then we just play 90 minutes?
I think we might, if anything, we might have to like move over to Wembley's training ground or something, just redo the whole thing, do an excavation of it all, just make sure there's not anybody that's put any curses on it. That's what it feels like at this point, because we're doing everything to try to fix this injury situation. And it hasn't been. It's been a thing, though, that's been long. Even I know people blamed a lot on Ange Postecoglou, but it was the case even before Ange that we were just getting so many injuries at inconvenient times with players. It wasn't necessarily totally unique to even Ange. And then Thomas Frank, like the dude's not even in charge, and it's just the summer, and he gets injuries like over the summer when they're not even playing at all. Like, it's just amazing. Like, how is Dom Solanke injured himself again? Someone that again had no injury record really of any kind before he came to Spurs, and then is injured, not necessarily a lot, but more than he's ever been before with any other club. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Even I think that was the case too with, I forget who else, had some major injuries that necessarily didn't before, but you just hope. I think Xavi Simons is one of them, thankfully, who maybe hasn't had too many injuries in his career, and hopefully that doesn't happen with Spurs, but we'll certainly test him.
No, for definite. I mean, there was a funny image that I saw this week when the players were all returning. I think they were coming back Tuesday, and it was Colomani looking out the window, and he's probably thinking, I've just spent 6 months in Italy, and he's looked out at Hotspur Way, and he's looked out into Enfield. And I mean, I don't know whether you've seen the weather forecast for over here this week, but it's been pissing it down. And he's looked out the window thinking, I was sunny in Turin. Now I'm in Enfield in North London. It's pouring down a rain. What the hell have I done? And all that. But it's
tour in northern Italy. I mean, I haven't been there before, but it is pretty far north in Italy, so I imagine it gets actually quite cold. It's kind of close to the mountains, and they can get some snow and stuff up there. But I bet it is still nicer weather than England for sure. And then he was in Frankfurt. In Frankfurt, it's not too great either. In West Germany, it's usually also a bit similar weather, pretty cold, pretty uninteresting weather-wise. So maybe he is, you'd hope, kind of used to it for the most part. He's a big guy too, so he looks like he's someone who can keep himself warm.
Yeah, I just thought it was quite interesting because he turned up and then you had Simmons following him in, and he had like a little bag, and everyone's going, "Oh, he's carrying his shoes in this little bag." And then someone went and did research. It turns out it's a £2,000 wash bag and all that, just with all these little cleaning products in. So you're like, if I could afford a £2,000 wash bag, I don't think I'd be taking the piss out of it, to be honest. I think I'd be quite happy with that. Let's put it that way. I mean, I don't have that sort of disposable income to just drop £2,000 on a wash bag. I think I've got a Spurs one that cost me about 10 quid off of eBay, something like that.
It's actually amazing to me. Just sometimes, I think in their case, like, it's more just the idea of buying something that expensive is the allure, because sometimes you can find something of a brand like that or whatever, and then it happens to be on sale. So, I'm sort of in that category where you just actually try to maybe get, the brand for the sake of the brand, and then you just look whatever's on sale. But some people, they don't have to worry about that type of thing. I think in Xavi Simons' case too, weather-wise, he should be fine. Netherlands is, again, maybe slightly similar weather to England, maybe to at least London for the most part. And then also he was at Leipzig, where Leipzig, is pretty close to Berlin, and Berlin is pretty cold and pretty miserable in the winters as well. So I'm pretty sure they're pretty used to it.
No, most definitely. And I mean, it's been positive seeing them training this week. So, yeah. I mean, I would probably say that we may at least see one of them in the starting lineup. And I think we'll probably definitely see both of them, if they're not in the starting lineup, come off the bench. So, I mean, we've got 5 new signings. One's out injured. Well, if we want to treat it as big time, we say 7 signings. Danso and Tell from before. I reckon we'll see Danso on the bench. We'll probably see Tell on the bench as well, after him unfortunately being left out of the Champions League squad in favour of Odebear in there, but also based on the back of Spurs' continuous issues over the last 3 years of club homegrown players. That's a Spurs problem. That's not a fans problem. So that's for the club to sort out. Hopefully with Archie and Lucas and Vuskovic being on the B list next year, and at least one youngster making it next season as well. But we shall see on that one. And we'll likely see Danso on the bench. Obviously, Vuskovic is out on loan in Hamburg, so that's another one in Germany. But he seems to be getting his attitude going, and he's a big lad. I mean, I've seen him in pre-season, and he's a big guy for 17, 18. So he's going to be very impressive, I reckon, in years to come. So then we get on to Takai. He's obviously going to still probably be out injured, so we won't see him for a while. We've got Kudus, who came in next. Do you reckon we'll see Kudus play against his former club?
100%. I imagine he's one of the first on the team sheet. I think, to your original question from before, I think he'll find a way to get Simmons into the team. I'm not sure if it's going to be on the left or through the middle. Maybe I'd go, as much as I said Paulinho probably will play my version of a team, I actually would go Bentancur, Sarr, Simmons, because it is a slightly more attack-minded, but I still think he should be fine enough defensively. And then I would try to find like a way to get Kolo Muani into the team, unless he wants to stick with Brennan Johnson. I'm by no means Brennan Johnson's biggest fan, probably one of his bigger haters. And I just think against teams like West Ham, like when they aren't going to maybe leave a ton of space in behind or anything like that, I just wonder, how often is Brennan Johnson going to be able to find a way to create something? Because that's just my biggest gripe with him. He's just someone that relies on others creating for him instead of him creating anything for anybody else. He's just somebody that seems to just require someone to make chances for him, and that's not the other way around. He doesn't reciprocate it. But maybe if you do go Simmons and Sarr and Bentancur and Kudus, you have more of a creative team there to then provide chances for Richarlison as well as Brennan Johnson. I would say, though, it was only one game, but Richarlison against Bournemouth, I was only able to watch so much of the game because I was at a wedding. But it was one of those games where, like, Richarlison's hold-up play is so hit and miss. Like, there are times at striker where he can hold up the ball actually all right, but then that game, it was just like, there's so many times when the ball was just hit into him and he's just got to hold it up for like a second or two, but and it just kept bouncing off of him. He just couldn't hold up a shopping bag. It felt like that game. And it would be nice to have someone like a Solanke back to be that, because Solanke, I think, isn't as good as being in the right places to score, whereas Richarlison is good at sniffing out opportunities and chances, where Solanke not as much. But Solanke, I do think, has better hold-up play than Richarlison. He doesn't lose it nearly as much. I'm trying to think of a way. Do you maybe play Kolomouani up top, move Richie to the left? Do you put Kolomouani on the left wing, use him as more of a guy that can hold up the ball? Because I do think Brennan Johnson and Richarlison are just both at times, maybe when Richarlison playing more through the middle, this is the case, but they both are very, very negative at being able to hold up the ball, progress the ball, be able to drive up the pitch with it, compared to someone like Kudus. Like Kudus, you can fire the ball right at him, like straight to his chest, and like he'll bring it down, shoulder off his player, and then get going. Whereas with Brennan Johnson, like anytime he receives it, he looks to immediately go sideways or backwards, doesn't look to take on his man, doesn't look to make runs in behind. And then Richarlison in the last game against Bournemouth was a bit of the same, just like couldn't get in behind, couldn't hold up the ball. So when you have two guys that just aren't doing their job in the forward line, it makes it very difficult to create chances on a regular basis, because then it's just you look at the other guy to mark and then you just take him out of the game and let the other two just sort of waste chance after chance to create something. So that's my slight worry, is just, that Bournemouth attack. There's nothing going for us. And I think it was because of Richarlison and Brennan Johnson just being so terrible. That's just my take on things.
No, I think you make a valid point. And I was like you, I missed quite big chunks of the game because I was in Canterbury at the time for a mate's birthday. And I was kind of listening to it on BBC Sport. And to be honest, Five Live's commentators aren't exactly the best. They don't give you the most positive take. It was Bournemouth are doing this, Bournemouth are doing that.
Yeah.
Well, tell me what Spurs are doing. And it turned out Spurs were doing a lot of F-all in respect of that. But when I did hear it, it was a very much what I've raised the last couple of times. I've seen Brennan and Jed play on the left-hand side. That I think they are both trying to compete for the same space. They are both trying to go inverting wingers in that scenario. They're both cutting in. They're both not taking on their man. They want to cut inside their man to go towards goal. And they're both, I don't think it works for them two on the left. So that's my first point with it. Richie, like we say, is very hit and miss with his hold-up play. He has a great game, like against Burnley, like against City. And then on a team that theoretically should be easier to play against, he was very redundant in that he had no shots on goal. He had no use to the team. And you'd think that having players like Kolomouani, Xavi, and also Solanke give different options. And even Tell coming on there offered more in 20 minutes than Richie did for 70 minutes.
I'd agree.
So this is what Richie has. He comes in and out of games. So I do wonder whether playing up front, sort of maybe a Solanke or a Moani with Kudus on the right, Richarlison on the left, and Simmons in that sort of 10 pocket as such, with, say, like Sarr and Bentancur behind, could be a good option for this game. And then you have the aspects of Tell, Solanke, Odebear, Bergvall, Johnson. I mean, you've got 5 subs there who could all make an impact on a game theoretically, which last year we wouldn't have been saying that. We'd have been saying, oh, who can we deploy? Maybe a Dane Scarlett if we want to, or and when you think about it, we're still missing Maddison and Kulusevski, aren't we? I mean, this is games that them two would love. So let's see what we think. So what would be your predicted lineup, mate, for this one?
I do think if I were to go with what Thomas Frank is going to do, I think he is going to find a way to get Simmons into the team. So I think he'll potentially do it. I wonder if he'll do it on the left, actually. I wonder if he will go like Simmons on the left, striker Richarlison, right wing Kudus, and then he'll keep the midfield the same of Sarr, Bentancur, Palhinha, because that's just, again, where I do think some of the best performances have come from. And then it is going to be the back line of Jet Spence, Romero, Van de Ven, Porro, and Vicario. I feel like there's more of a chance of Simmons coming into the team than Kolo Muani straight away. I don't know why. It's just a hunch.
No, that's fair. I mean, he seems to fancy Richarlison at the moment, and he said that Richarlison is his starting number 9, hasn't he, in previous press conferences? So, I mean, if he rates Richarlison over Solanke at the moment, I know Solanke's been injured, but he was starting in the 2 games that Solanke was available against Burnley and against Man City as well, wasn't he? So, Kolo Muani realistically would probably be on level pegging with Solanke, only just coming in, and he hasn't played football for nearly 3 months because of being waiting for a transfer to Juventus that never happened. So, I mean,
yeah,
he's probably going to be a little bit further behind. I do wonder whether we might have like a weird player come in, or not a weird player, but like a caveat player, something like that, who's got a point to prove this game. So, I mean, I do wonder whether we go like Spence, Romero, Van de Ven, Porro, or whether we do see an Udogie in there, maybe seeing Paulinho, Sarr, Simmons, maybe a Tell, maybe on the left, Richie up front, and maybe Kudus right. But we've got a lot of options now, haven't we, to sort of throw into a game like this. And I mean, even in midfield, having Gray and Bergvall, both high energy players who can sort of throw something in there, having Kolo and Johnson available potentially off the bench, having Odebear and Tell. I mean, the fact is, we've even got Danso and Davis to still come in there as well if we need reliable backups. I mean, they're not going to set the world alight, but they're going to have at least some sort of impact, aren't they? And then we know second choice goalkeeper is Kinski. Brandon Austin's just there to make his mixtape and make up the numbers sort of thing for us. But it definitely makes it more positive when we think about it now. And then having Dragusin to come back in, to Kai to come in, Kulusevski, all of these we'll see before Christmas. Maddison is more longer term, and I do wonder whether Maddison's time is coming to an end at the club because these injuries seem to be racking up more and more. He's not getting any younger. He doesn't really fit the profile of the sort of squad now too much. And with the injuries, this could still be a very much an injury that sort of puts him on this downward spiral to it. But what do you think in terms of sort of like a score line for this one, mate? Because I think this is going to be edgy.
I think I'd expect it to be a bit cagey. I'm going to go 2-0 Spurs. I usually predict a win, but I don't expect us to be sensational in this game because it's just there have been very few times I can remember where we go to the London Stadium and we blow them away, type of thing. And even when we have played well against them, we just don't really, seem to be able to get over the line as much. So I'm going to say 2-0, and I'd imagine that the goals will come more in the second half than they will in the first half. That's going to be my prediction.
Do you remember that game that we had under Mourinho when Dele did that lovely flick round the corner on the touchline, didn't he? Flicked it round and then went there. So even in that game, we were 3-0 up, and yet we ended up just winning it 3-2. So even when we think we're playing brilliantly, we still only won it 3-2, aren't we? So, I mean, literally, big up to you as well, boys. Thank you, mate. So realistically, who do you think's going to score in this game for us? Who are you pegging it down to?
I got a sneaky feeling Kudus could. I think the fact that they've also lost Emerson, of course, not our Emerson, but their Emerson. I think he was secretly a very solid player for that team, actually. I think he was actually a good player defensively, good going forward for them. I think they brought in a brand new guy who it's hard to really tell, how good he's actually looked. I think he's a fellow Senegalese player to Pape Matar Sarr, but I haven't really made too much of him yet. So I just wonder if Kudus just gives him a tough time that evening, and with Kudus probably wanting to maybe get one over. He seems like a guy that really likes his time at Spurs, and then maybe just wants to remind West Ham what he's capable of. So I'm going to go Kudus scoring, and I'm going to put Pape Matar Sarr on the goal sheet as well. My thing with Pape Matar Sarr, just a tiny little rant. I'll keep it very brief, but I know there are a lot of people that are massive Lucas Bergvall fans, but I do feel like the thing with Pape Matar Sarr is he finds a way, it seems like, to chip in with goals and assists. He is able to, even last season, him and Lucas Bergvall played a similar amount of minutes, and Pape Matar Sarr, and what was labeled, probably rightfully so, an off season for him under Ange, he still had 7 or 8 more goal contributions than Lucas Bergvall did. The guy is able to produce goals and assists somehow, some way. And it seems like in big games too, he tends to show up. I feel like Pape Matar Sarr kind of has that bit about him where he can just be at the right place at the right time to score, or just play a big part in the goals. Like against Man City, right? He played the flick on, to help us score for the first goal, and then the second goal for Palhinha, he was the one who got in the way to cause the press and the breakup of play. So I'm going to go Sarr and Kudus.
Nice. No, I do appreciate that. I mean, I don't know if you saw that clip of Semenyo taking the piss out of Kudus on international duty at all.
Surely that should motivate him.
Yeah, that's got to. I mean, because we all know on our day we'd take Semenyo as well in our team. I mean, he is such a class player and all that. If we could have got him at the start of the window, I'd have been astronomically happy. But somehow they managed to get him to sign a new contract. I think it's going to be a little bit more open. I reckon we will concede against West Ham. We always seem to have a habit of doing it. And I reckon maybe it will be a breakaway goal or a defensive relapse. So I think we'll probably win it 3-1. I reckon Paqueta or Bowen will get their goal, to be honest. That seems to be their only outlet. I reckon that we will have a lot of fun against Kyle Walker-Peters in their right-back position if he plays there, unless they play Wan-Bissaka there and he plays left-back for them. I reckon Kudus will at least get an assist. I'm thinking that Richie will get a goal against I reckon Sarr could. And I'm going to go an outside chance of Solanke or Kolomani getting a goal as well. Yeah. And I hope that Simmons probably gets a assist in this game. I don't think he'll play the full 90, but I think he's probably going to have at least a good impact on this game in some form or another. I
wouldn't rule out a set piece either, actually. It seems like we're good from set pieces, and maybe Graham Potter just strikes me as a guy. The team is just all over the place, like this West Ham team. I don't think they're good defensively. And so I wonder if actually we could just get a cheap one against them set piece wise, just not ruling that out.
Wouldn't be surprised probably seeing Romero or Van der Ven maybe popping up with a header or a drop goal.
Yeah, just like, they don't track a man, and we actually are under Ange, we seem to have no idea what we were doing with set pieces, both going forward and defensively. And under Frank, it's been the total opposite. So I'm just not ruling that out.
Yeah, because I think we brought in that Jorgensen or something like that, the guy on Frank's coaching staff. And I was actually at the first game of the season this year at White Hart Lane against Burnley, and Frank actually went and sat down into his technical area, and you could see the set piece coach for every set piece, either whether it be defensive or attacking, was standing on the edge of our technical area and actually directing the players throughout all of it. So it's really positive. And then you see Justin Cochran doing it, Chris Haslam as well, in different aspects of the game. Matt Wells when it comes to the defending side of the game as well. So they all have their own little parts to play in the sort of, what do you call it? In the actual gameplay itself. It's not just the 11 on the pitch, it's the subs around it, it's the coaching staff, what impact they have on the game at different points, which is really interesting. So it will be an interesting matchup. Just while we are covering coaching staff, obviously Postecoglou has replaced Nuno at Nottingham Forest. I just wanted to cover it quickly, and it seems that they have picked up pretty much every person that we've sacked from Spurs this summer in their coaching staff, in terms of Sergio Raimondo, Nick Montgomery, Rob Birch as well. There's been even talk of Scott Mungo in there. I mean, that guy had no purpose whatsoever in football operations. He was more commercial operations and overall running of the club. But what did you make of that with Ange going there, and also with him rebuilding his coaching staff? Because this is the first time he's actually done that. He usually gets all new people in wherever he goes.
I'd imagine that's been done partially because he's taking over a team mid-season, or at least, with no preseason to work with. So you would probably be hard to bring in a bunch of new coaching staff and then, teach them as well as the players, your play style and how you want to do things. It might actually just be, even if he isn't, let's say, the biggest fan of some of the guys he had with us just recently, it might be better just to have people that already have at least an inkling or a clue of how you want to play your game and what you like to play as. And then maybe in the summer, he can look to make some changes to the coaching staff. That is, if he even makes it to the summer. Because I personally, in terms of the decision itself, I'm glad that Ange has gotten maybe another crack in the Premier League. Like, I don't really wish any harm towards him. I don't really wish any luck towards him. I find it kind of funny. It's cut both ways. There are a lot of people that really want to see him fail, and then there are a lot of people that really want to see him succeed. I kind of don't really care, to be honest. Like, I kind of am a little bit in the middle when it comes to Ange. It feels like, though, he's a bit like an ex-girlfriend or something with a lot of Spurs fans, where they either still love them and, are like, oh, best of luck. Like, it was weird under the Forest announcement. There are all these Spurs accounts that were like saying, best of luck, hope it goes great for you, type of thing. I'm like, that's a bit weird. And then with other people that are like desperate to get one over him, it's like, well, he also won us a trophy. It's not like he's the devil or anything either. So I just, we'll see how he does. But to answer your question on the coaching staff, I imagine it's just so that they're, 4 fewer people he doesn't have to teach his whole philosophy to in the course of 3 days.
No, I think that's definitely fair. And I mean, I, for one, say good luck to Ange. Ultimately, I don't hold any bad feelings there. He's a rival manager now. I was sad when he went. I would have given him more time, but I do think now we've got Thomas Frank, we have to back the manager, don't we? We back the team, we back the manager, we back the process. And you are right. I think that because of how quickly he's overturned going to Forest, he didn't have much chance to really rebuild stuff. He's had like 2 days, and we know that Jedinak went. That was the name that I missed. Mile Jedinak as well.
Yeah.
He obviously went with Sergio and Nick Montgomery first time around, and then Rob Birch left after that when we promoted Dean Brill from the under-18. So it was quite interesting that Birch has gone with him as such, because obviously Rob Birch was Matt Wells's man. He from our academy days sort of thing, and he was with Scott Parker as well. So I would have thought potentially Ange might have tried for Matt Wells, but I think Matt Wells is quite comfortable with Thomas Frank, and I think there's a potential Spurs manager there, like with Mason in the making there as well. But it's definitely, that's one thing that I wanted to ask you, mate. If Ange comes to the Spurs stadium, if he's still in the job by the time that we get to the game in March and Marinakis hasn't had a row with him on the pitch, would you cheer him, and what do you think the reaction would be to him?
Kind of neither, to be honest. I wouldn't boo him, or I wouldn't really cheer him. Maybe I'd more boo him just ironically, because I am that sort of fan who just kind of likes to just take the take the piss sometimes out of things and just be a bit of a shithouse. I'm very much one of those that doesn't really, even managers that I really liked, like I was a huge fan of Antonio Conte. I was a huge fan of Jose Mourinho before they came to Spurs. But if they were to, come back and play against us, I wouldn't be cheering for them or like giving them a massive applause or anything. I just, maybe I'm just wired a bit differently, but I sort of treat it as like, they're done. They're not the manager anymore. It's not like they were here with us for 5-10 years or something like that, where maybe then my opinion would slightly change. In that case, they're like one of many managers that have been here for like 1 or 2 seasons and then left. Like it's it doesn't feel like it's maybe if it's like a Jurgen Klopp situation with Ange, then maybe my answer be slightly different. But the fact he was only here for so long, it's just I don't have a ton of love or a ton of hate for the guy. I'd even add too, for the people that do have a lot of love for him, he's the one manager I can recall that had more rows with the fans than anybody, during his time. And there were some pretty outlandish moments where he, in my opinion, very immaturely decided to have these scraps with the fans when he really didn't need to. And also that Chelsea game where he cupped his ears to the fans when he's away from home at the Stamford Bridge. Like that's when you need to be all together and you need to be sort of in one cohesive unit. And he's cupping his ears to the fans to try to prove one over us, and then we still lost. So it's just kind of like, I don't know. I think the guy also, in my opinion, it's not like I really don't get how he has. I'm very much in the middle. I think he did us a massive service by winning us a trophy, but I also feel like there are plenty of times where I think he could have handled himself a lot better with Spurs fans. So I don't see why he deserves a massive praise and a massive reception or anything.
Yeah, I definitely think that's fair. I mean, there's a lot of English fans I know who do worship him. I don't worship him. I say thank you very much, but I've got more affinity to someone like Redknapp or to Pochettino from my time of watching football, to be honest. I thought that Conte had his moments, but was never in touch with the fans. I don't think Mourinho was ever in touch with the fans. Nuno was in the job less than a couple of months, never got a chance. I mean, Stellini was in had a couple of chances and then went. I mean, I was at the Bournemouth game when we lost, and I was at the Newcastle game when we lost, and now it got him the sack. So he never had any sort of link to the fans. I think that Ange, we tried to have that link with him, but definitely there was aspects to it where, like you say, the instances, the Wolves game, the Chelsea game, he had rows with them. And this travelling fan base, i.e. away fans, are the ones who are the biggest Spurs supporters, I think, going, because they're the ones who have enough points. They've been to enough games. They have the loudest noise. Home fans are all right, but that's where you get tourists going to. You have semi-professional fans. You have impartial fans going as well. The away fans are what motivates the players every single day, I think, when they go on these games. And he never had a real relationship with them in the second season, did he? And maybe in Bilbao there was a little bit, but I don't think it's as much as people make out to be. And I think that Frank is a more well-rounded manager. I know he hasn't won as much, and this is his biggest job that he's ever had. But looking at Frank, he has more ideas than Ange. And Ange is like the polar opposite manager than what Forest have had. You're going from counter-attacking football to super attacking football. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like their squad. I think Hudson-Odoi's class. I'd take him at Spurs. I'd take Gibbs-White. I'd take Murillo. I'd take... is it Milenkovic or something like that?
I like Oleana, their fullback. They have a lot of good players. I just quickly, though, on it, I do think, Pochettino was even booed, right? Because he went to Chelsea. So I think that was part of it. But he was booed. So I don't see why Ange, necessarily deserves much of a better reception, to be honest.
No, exactly. And obviously you get to see Ange more than most of us, to be honest, mate, being from America and all of that. And I know you don't have much affiliation to the US men's national team, but you get to see it. And they're in all sorts of dire straits, aren't they? Because the team has a lot of good players in it, but they just can't gel and all of that. And the talent ID from the MLS are all coming to Europe, aren't they? They all come to Europe, or they go to Saudi or South America, or the players that are in the MLS are all South American. They are not North American, or they're Canadian and all that. So literally you've got your glory days players. So he's kind of working to try and build something that isn't really there, is he? I mean, what's the sort of feelings towards Pochettino as well with the men's national team?
I don't like. Again, I get sort of. I'm not a great U.S. men's national team fan because I do find American fans to be just in general a bit annoying when it comes to the U.S. men's team. I just think they overhype the team and that they overrate them, and then at the same time they also underrate them. Where when we go into tournaments, they always seem to think that every team that we're lined up against is like a group of death type of situation when it's really not. It's just like a regular group, and then the other thing though is that then at the same time they expect to beat every team that they're put in front of, which I think is also ridiculous because I don't think the squad is nearly that good. I think Christian Pulisic is a fine player, but we sort of, in my opinion, tend to overhype him, and as well as plenty of other players in the team, I think do get kind of overpraised and overhyped, and it's just it's this weird, I think, just back and forth, of just what do you call it, contradicting, kind of feelings, towards the team, and so that's why, in a way, I've been kind of disillusioned by it, and a lot of the punditry around the American team is usually a bit annoying. Again, where they seem to they expect too much, and then when the team doesn't meet those expectations, they really, kind of hate on them. And then in my opinion, I'm like, well, they're not that great, they shouldn't really get that much hate and disrespect. And it's probably the best and most talented the team has ever looked, and I think ever, to be honest. So it's just, it's all very contradicting. So that's why I kind of don't pay much attention to it. But from what I can tell, the fans are very skeptical about Pochettino because he's a bit like a Ruben Amorim or like a Graham Potter. He's not necessarily done a whole lot to really impress the fans, actually.
And it's a difficult one because he is on like one of the biggest contracts in world football, isn't he? If all the reports, well, at least the reports on his release clause are meant to be like $20 million and all that to release him. I mean, that's silly money and all that. When you think of it, that's a transfer fee for a player. We don't expect that for managers, do we? I mean, Amorim's was about 14 million. So, I mean, it's quite big. And I'm like you, I'm very skeptical about American sports in general, to be honest. I find the punditry very OTT, to be honest. I think it's very over the top. I mean, I don't like English commentators, to be honest, because I think they're old and full of shit and all that. But I think that American commentators are very much over the top, over imaginative, over exaggerating. I mean, NFL, NASCAR, the Super Bowl, all of that. I mean, if you had the Super Bowl over here, you just get someone just having a go at you and all of that. That's our half-time shows. We have some geezer on the mic looking like us, just going, "This is what we've got. We got Jack, we got Cameron. What are we doing at half-time?" It's just like you guys have this massive big show, and you do it at the World Cup. You do it for the NFL, all of that stuff. Over here, you never get that stuff. So it is more interesting and difficult and all that when we look at stuff. But when we sort of do with different bits like that, when I kind of compare it to English sports, it's all very much grandeur, but I don't really see it go any further than that. It's like the MLS games never sort of come over to England too much, whereas everyone seems to know the Premier League in the States, don't they, as well? And even in Canada, I'm guessing everyone knows the Premier League. And there's Spurs Supporters Trust and Spurs Supporters Groups in every single state that I know. I mean, I've got mates in Florida, I've got mates in Seattle, I've got mates in Toronto. All of these big cities have these sort of fan groups, and I'm guessing you're probably part of some of them potentially out there as well, mate, or have links with them doing it. It's like when you compare it to over here, there's not that many. There's a lot of NFL fans and a lot of American football fans, and some have an American team, but the biggest transfer at the moment we've seen go over there is Heung-min Son to LAFC. What sort of connotations does that have for you guys out there?
I think the sport has actually only been growing. Like, I think football is really catching on, or soccer in this case, to not confuse the two between the NFL and I do think that I'll just keep it to football. Football is really improved in terms of audience and attention. I'd say it's probably the fastest growing in terms of like media and just everything. Like I think that's part of the reason why the TV deals are just so massive right now, is because the American audience at the end of the day is massive. We're like 350 million people, and it's on the main channels now, like the main TV channels. And they're now, like prime time in the morning or in the afternoon, like when a lot of people sometimes are just at home, waking up, having a coffee, and they can then watch the Premier League. Like you run, I think more and more, you run across so many more football fans in the US than you would have 10, 15 years ago. 10, 15 years ago, when you met another football fan of the Premier League, they would almost become your best friend, because it was like being a part of like a tiny little social club where you both were in love with that one thing that no one else really knows much about. So you would like, even I had a lot of friends that were just fans of usually different clubs, and you would just get along just by the fact that you liked football. And nowadays, you would say it's a little bit different. Nowadays, like you do see someone like just wearing a random kit, of a certain club, and you don't like. Back then, I would have gone up to them and been like, saying something, introducing myself. Whereas now, it's not as much of an anomaly, you would say. It's only just growing and growing, because I think a lot of the US sports are more dying in popularity, or maybe just not maybe dying, or in some of them they are. I think they are dying in popularity, but they're also being replaced by football fans. Like people find football now more interesting than they do the NBA or the NFL and some of the others. So I think that's just what it is.
And that's the thing, you've got a lot more money coming in from owners of like NFL clubs who are investing more in actual football clubs as well, isn't it? I mean, Fenway Group have links to America. I think who's the ones that own Liverpool as well? They've obviously got NFL links. We've got NFL links to Spurs, but they sort of bring football back to America and Canada instead of the other way round, whereas NFL is only played at, I think, 2 grounds in the UK, at Wembley and Spurs at the moment, in London at least. And then when you think about it, the links to all of these clubs in the MLS is growing. Red Bull have put a lot more money into there as well, and you get a lot more players coming through. But no, that's really interesting to hear from you, mate. So I think that as it's nearly 10 o'clock English time, and it's probably, about 2 o'clock?
Yeah, getting there, yeah.
Yeah, so you probably need to get back to work, and I probably need to go to bed. I'm not going to lie, but I need a cigarette as well.
Great chat.
No, I really appreciate it, mate, and it's been really insightful to have you on with me. I know we've covered for Harry, we've covered for Aaron, we've covered for Travis, but we've actually managed to get it to an hour and 45 minutes between the two of us. And even the dog didn't get involved in the podcast. I mean, it wanted to, but I think we've kept Fido down for at least one time on this one, mate. But no, I mean, I really appreciate it, man, and appreciate your daytime as well. I will get used to time changes. But,
thanks, Colin. It was a great conversation, man. I thought we covered it very, very well, and just two professional blabbermouths,
very much so, mate.
With the front two handled it well. So thanks, Harry. Thanks to you, Colin. Thanks for having me back.
No, really appreciate that, mate. And where can everyone find you on socials and your own podcast as well?
Just if you want to, on game days, since, I have to wake up at crazy o'clock in the morning, I watch along with the Irish guy, David Harris, over on the Irish Hotspur. If you need someone to watch the games with and just sort of preview the games with in case you're not able to go to them, or, you're just hanging out at home, hang out with us, Irish Hotspur.
No, I've really loved the Irish Hotspur, to be fair. You guys always do perk me up, and hopefully this season I might be on with you guys at some point if you're awake at some time, mate. But no, big ups, like what Jack said, to Harry for letting us do tonight. That has been our West Ham versus Tottenham preview, 5:30 Premier League time, British Standard Time. I mean, Jack, what time's the game on in Seattle for you guys?
Not too bad, actually. The game will start at 9:30 a.m. my time, so it's not too bad. It can definitely be a lot worse than that usually.
So you can have your breakfast while you're doing it, whereas we've got the late. I think we have the late kickoff on Saturday. Yep. Let me just have a quick look.
It is the later kickoff. Yeah, it's 5:30.
Yeah, We are the middle late kickoff. There is one later than us. It's
Oh, okay.
Chelsea Brentford at 8 o'clock English time. So I mean, that'd
Okay.
be about what 11:30, 12 o'clock for you.
Yeah,
I would
exactly. Yeah,
say.
12 o'clock. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Andrew's got the early kickoff against Arsenal at
Yeah, I'm
12:30 English
debating whether I
time.
wake up to even like give that a peep.
Mate, that's gonna kill you. What sort of time's
I
that
know
gonna
I'm
be?
a sicko. I'm a sicko, but I might just take a peep at like the second half. Wait till the second half and then wake up that time, just see what the score looks like, see if it looks any interesting.
That's
'Cause
true. I mean, I believe the game's
it's pretty
on.
box office.
Yeah, that's on TNT for us. So would it be NBC or Fox for you
Yeah,
guys? I'm guessing.
it's NBC that usually has it. For us over here, they're the ones with the TV rights.
And then I think it's Sky for us for the West Ham game as well. So obviously it is two London. Well, I think we've got two London derbies on Saturday, so that should be interesting. I've already heard the Met Police are spread thin, so that's going to go down well because there are protests planned in West London as well in regards to some political situations. So that's going to make it interesting. But
That's funny.
no, that's going to be a very interesting Saturday for us. But no, thanks for coming on today, Jack.
Thanks, Colin.
Really appreciate that. Thanks to Harry as well. If anyone wants to find me, you can find me at Callum Stubbs 97 on X. I will be on Spurs Diehards reviewing the game at 10 o'clock on Sunday night as well. So don't forget to come and check us out. But from all of us here tonight, a big come on you Spurs, and let's beat West Ham.
Come on, you Spurs.